Reborn into my youth, I found her on the rooftop. Emma Hayes, the girl everyone despised. She was covered in bruises, her eyes lifeless, like a butterfly with broken wings, still trying in vain to take flight. In the sunlight, I reached out to her silent plea for help. If redemption meant shouldering the weight of a heavy soul, I thought to myself, I was willing. That afternoon, I took hold of that delicate rose. On my first day at the new school, I saw a completely different girl, the fake heiress who basked in everyone's adoration, Claire Summers. She was always surrounded by people, boys and girls alike, a mix of those who liked her and those who liked her even more, as if the very concept of being disliked couldn't touch her. Among her most ardent admirers were her childhood friend, Leo Vance, and the king of the campus, Jake Reed. The two of them were constantly competing, trying to outdo each other with new ways to win her favor. Claire was always smiling, her eyes crinkling on her flawless face, accentuating her small dimples, making her look vibrant and adorable. My eyes drifted past the crowd, settling on the tall, somber girl in the back row. Even though she was sitting in the sunlight, it was as if her very soul had been hollowed out. No one paid any attention to her. But I knew her name, Emma Hayes. She had grown up in a poorly funded group home, like a weed in springtime, resiliently enduring the wind and rain. With straight A's, she had earned a scholarship to this prestigious prep school. It seemed like everything was finally heading in the right direction, until a DNA test proved she was the true daughter of the Summers family, switched at birth years ago. The real pearl had been lost, left to gather dust in obscurity, while a common stone was mistaken for a gem and polished into a radiant princess. But a wildflower could never become a hothouse orchid, and Emma Hayes could never be Claire Summers. One was the campus sweetheart who captivated everyone with a single glance, so full of life. The parents adored her, her former fiancé adored her, and even Jake, the campus king who had once shown me a sliver of kindness, adored her. The other was seen as the awkward, foolish outcast. Nobody liked her. She had returned, but it was as if she hadn't. She never had a home before, and she still didn't have one now. Her family scrutinized her with cold, harsh words, finding her coarse and ill-mannered, completely lacking in social graces. Even when Claire framed her with the most cunning lies, all it took was for Claire's eyes to well up with tears, and everyone would immediately turn on Emma. Why would Claire single you out and not anyone else? If you didn't do it, why would she accuse you? We raised Claire from the time she was a baby. We know her character better than anyone. Emma, stop making excuses. Even the boy she once considered a friend would just scowl at her and say, if anything happens to Claire, I'll never forgive you. Claire, Claire, Claire. She was the only one anyone ever saw. When she first came to this so-called home, she was only 16 and had tried to be kind to everyone. But the family she had hoped for didn't love her. On her first birthday with them, no one remembered. She didn't get a single happy birthday. But when Claire casually mentioned, I'm craving cake, the Summers had a dozen different kinds delivered to the house that same day. Claire smiled as she brought a slice over to Emma, her expression so pure it seemed devoid of malice. My birthday isn't for another 6 months, but that's okay. You can have some birthday cake. If you like it, sis, you can have one every day. That smile was like sugar-coated poison. With everyone watching, Emma didn't take it. She was allergic to mangoes, and the slice Claire offered her was, of course, mango cake. She turned and went upstairs, shutting the door on the commotion below. But she could still clearly hear Leo Vance mutter, so ungrateful. Her parents didn't say a word to defend her. After that, her birthdays were like forgotten leaves, swept away by the wind. She was like a stranger just staying in the house, while Claire was its true mistress. Claire didn't like Emma, and Emma herself couldn't understand why. She had already taken everything that should have been Emma's. So why did she still harbor such intense animosity? Emma tried to change things, but nothing worked. She had been the academic star of the school, admired by everyone. But then Claire would say to her friends with a wounded look, Emma isn't very nice to me at home. Then she would add, as if being magnanimous, but never mind, I'm sure she doesn't mean it. I guess she just doesn't like me. Some people just have that strange ability to say almost nothing, yet leave everyone feeling they've suffered a terrible injustice. So many people adored Claire that their collective whispers were enough to drag Emma into a swamp of rumors she couldn't escape. I later read the book she wrote. When she recorded this part of her life, she used only a single sentence. My feet were trapped in a mire, and unable to walk, I could only crawl on my knees toward the future. During lunch, Claire pulled me aside to chat. She acted as if she couldn't survive without being the center of attention, and her deliberate, cloying sweetness was starting to grate on me. When I finally turned away, I realized Emma was gone. My heart leaped into my throat, ignoring my own frail body, which left me breathless after just a few steps. I ran as fast as I could, sprinting for the roof. There, on the chest-high ledge, Emma stood with her arms outstretched, as if to embrace the wind. The wind billowed in her loose-fitting school uniform, making it look as if the slender girl had grown a pair of wings. She heard me burst through the door to the roof, but she didn't turn around. I reached back and locked the door behind me. Before I could say anything, the exertion sent my lungs into overdrive. My chest felt like a broken accordion, letting out loud, ragged gasps. On the quiet rooftop, there was only the whistling wind and the sound of my own violent, gut-wrenching coughs. The intense feeling of suffocation made my eyes burn and my nose sting. Emma finally turned to face me, her back to the six-story drop and the growing sounds of alarm from below. "What's wrong with you?" I managed a couple of coughs and nodded. "I was born this way. A little bit of everything. Could die at any moment." The air fell silent for a moment, filled only by the sharp whistle of the wind. After a long pause, Emma finally spoke. "Then why were you running?" "I was looking for you." The girl on the ledge froze for a second. "For me?" I leaned against the wall, forcing my weak legs to hold me up as I took a few steps toward her. "Emma Hayes, I want to be your friend. You may not know me yet, or have ever heard the name Ethan Miller. You couldn't know that someone understands all your fragility and loneliness, that he has crossed an ocean of time just to come to your side and tell you, Emma Hayes, you are not alone." Emma stood on the ledge, looking down at me, the shock in her eyes unmistakable. Behind me, teachers began pounding on the locked door, their muffled shouts of, "Please be calm," mixing with the noise. The girl on the ledge couldn't help but laugh. It started as a smirk, then grew into a choked chuckle, and finally a full-blown, mocking laugh. "Are you insane? We're just blind. Can't you see what's happening here? I'm about to jump, and you want to be friends? Does this really seem like the right time for that?" The wind on the roof was so strong it made my head spin. A wave of dizziness washed over me, and I suddenly felt hot. I swayed on my feet and managed to get the words out. "Emma, I'm dizzy. I think I'm running a fever." She frowned, glancing from the locked door to the growing crowd below. "You are so annoying." Before she could finish, I collapsed onto the ground and blacked out completely. She jumped, her voice shooting up an octave. "Hey, stop faking it. Hey, you." After shouting a few more times with no response, she got so frustrated that she leaped down from the ledge. She rolled me over, ready to slap me awake, but stopped when she saw my forehead was scraped and bleeding from hitting the concrete. With a resigned and frustrated curse, she hauled me onto her shoulders, unlocked the door, and started running for the infirmary. In most people's eyes, Emma Hayes could die and it wouldn't cause a single ripple. But I was different. I was the sole heir to the Miller family, the future CEO of the Miller Corporation. Even though I was born frail, a patient whose life was sustained by money, to them, I was still a priceless porcelain doll on a pedestal. Only I knew that this doll was trapped in unshaped clay, its soul completely hollow. I couldn't grow wings, and I couldn't fly into the wild. The next time I woke up, I was in a private VIP room at a hospital. Emma was sitting beside me, staring out the window and munching on an apple that was probably meant for me. "Why did you save me?" I asked. "I guess some saint decided to have a sudden burst of charity," she replied. I blinked, ignoring her biting sarcasm. "Emma, I'm thirsty." She whipped her head around to look at me, then stomped off to get a glass of water. "What a useless body," she grumbled. "Catching a fever just from a little wind on the roof. And you wanted to play the hero? If I hadn't come down when I did, you would have died from your fever before I even had a chance to jump." She kept rambling, every word sharp as a knife. I listened quietly until she was done, then reached out and took her hand. "Emma, don't be afraid." She reacted as if I'd told the funniest joke in the world, letting out a sharp laugh. "Me? Afraid? Why would I be afraid?" But even as she said it, her lips pressed into a thin line and her eyes began to redden. The 18-year-old Emma was still just a girl, awkward and proud, scared but pretending to be strong. She was nothing like the dark, ruthless woman I would later read about in her memoir. She didn't pull her hand away, just sat down on the edge of my bed. "Why do you want to be my friend so badly? Is it because you pity me?" I shook my head. "Strictly speaking, it's not the me of right now who wants to be your friend. It's the 28-year-old version of me, the one who had lost all interest in life. Whenever I despaired over my increasingly frail body, I would open Emma Hayes' autobiography. The cover didn't even have a title, just her name, Emma Hayes scrawled across it. It was both the title and the author. She wrote about everything that happened after she moved in with her family, including the incident on the roof. In the original version of her story, I wasn't there. No one came to save her. She jumped, and though she didn't die, she lost the use of her legs. She was trapped in the mud, forced to crawl on her knees, but she never surrendered. She wrote, "Even without my legs, I learned to fly higher than any able-bodied person." She graduated at the top of her class from an Ivy League school, started her own company, published a book, and traveled the world. She went skydiving and bungee jumping, fighting the world on her own terms. We had never met, but through her book, I felt like I had known her for a very long time. She was the one vibrant, unforgettable stroke of color in my otherwise monochrome existence. I thought that if I could have been there in her youth, I would never have allowed that rose to be broken, even if the scars, in their own way, made her more beautiful. I took an apple and placed it in Emma's palm. There's no special reason. I just want to be your friend. But if I had to give a reason, how about you're beautiful? Does that count? Emma looked down and took a bite of the apple, muttering under her breath. What kind of reason is that? I watched her and said, "That apple was for you to peel for me. You already ate the last one." Emma's face flushed. I know. It's just an apple. I'll peel you another one. You're so much trouble." She was trying to sound annoyed, but it was endearingly awkward. After Emma saved me, my parents insisted on meeting her. They told her that as my classmate, she should please look after me. The tips of her ears turned red, but she looked very serious and promised, "I will definitely take good care of Ethan." Then she glanced up and met my smiling eyes. She quickly looked away, embarrassed, but after a moment, she turned back. "Ethan, we're friends now." It sounds cliché, but the afternoon sun was perfect, streaming through the window and landing on her shoulders. A few chubby sparrows, startled by a gust of wind, chirped and flew into the sky. Emma turned her head to look at me, her gaze earnest. "Ethan, you're my first friend." I smiled. "We were already friends long before you ever met me. My health is poor, very poor. Our mansion has to be sterilized daily, and the medical staff who care for me aren't allowed to have direct physical contact. It's supposed to be a home, but it feels more like a cold, empty hospital devoid of any warmth. For one of my birthdays, my mother gave me a preserved rose in a glass dome. She stroked my hair, holding me on her lap as she smiled. "What's wrong? Don't you like it? It was the most beautiful one in my garden, and I saved it just for you, my darling." As a 5-year-old, I stared at the crimson rose under the glass. Its thorns had been clipped off, leaving only small, brown scars on the stem. A wave of sadness came over me as I gazed at it. It must have hurt so much when they pulled out its thorns. My mother froze for a second, then forced a smile. "Of course not, sweetie. It's just a rose." I looked up at her. "But is it lonely being trapped in there all by itself?" Like me, the light in my mother's eyes died. Then, tears streamed down her face. My beautiful mother cried so hard that day. I was only 5 and didn't really understand, but I continued to live in that mansion, growing up one day at a time. I seemed to have everything, more money than I could count, and a level of influence others could only dream of. And yet, I had nothing. My world was empty, and I didn't even have a healthy body. It might sound dramatic, but I genuinely had no interest in the world, until I saw the line on the cover of her autobiography. My life was meant to be a wilderness, not a railroad track. I was suddenly overcome with curiosity for this stranger. I had to know what a life like that was really like. But when I opened the book, all I saw was a rose. An imperfect, defiant rose whose thorns had been brutally clipped away when she was 18. I glanced at the preserved flower on my desk and felt as if I were looking at my own fate. The Summers family business, compared to the Miller fortune, was utterly insignificant. As for Leo Vance and Jake Reed, if I hadn't chosen to transfer to this school, not even their fathers would have been worthy of an audience with me. After resting at home for 2 days, I returned to school. The moment class ended, Claire came over, batting her big eyes at me. "Ethan, are you feeling better? I haven't seen you in days. I was so worried." Leo and Jake trailed behind her like bodyguards, eyeing me with a mixture of impatience and suspicion. I glanced up at her, my expression bored. "Oh, really?" Claire nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, you just transferred here, and you were so kind to help my sister, and then you got sick because of it. I feel terrible. So, how about I take care of you for a while?" Her eyes were wide with anticipation. Leo was the first to object. "What do you mean? You'll take care of him? He's a grown man. Can't he look after himself? Besides, your health isn't great either. Why should you be the one thanking him for Emma? Who the hell does she think she is anyway?" Claire put on a benevolent expression. "How can you say that? Emma is my sister. Ethan saved her, so of course I should thank him." Jake chimed in. You're just too kind, Claire. Claire blushed slightly. Oh, it's nothing. It's the least I can do. Ethan, please don't mind Leo. He's just a little blunt. He doesn't mean anything by it. Leo scowled. Why are you explaining yourself to him? I watched the three of them play out their little drama in front of me. When they were finished, I finally spoke. That won't be necessary. I don't need a stranger looking after me. And even if I did, Emma is more than enough. I hadn't even said anything harsh, but Claire's eyes immediately welled up with tears. I'm sorry, she whispered, looking heartbroken. I was being presumptuous. With that, she turned and ran off as if I had just committed some unforgivable crime. Leo immediately ran after her, but not before turning back to yell at me. How dare you talk to Claire like that? Know your place. I let out a soft laugh. I didn't even say anything harsh. But even if I had, what could you do about it? Hit me? Would you dare? Jake, furious, grabbed me by the collar, ready to throw a punch. I didn't even bother to resist. Just then, Emma, who had been standing outside the door, rushed in and seized Jake's wrist. You lay one finger on Ethan and see what happens. Jake froze. I slowly opened my eyes to look at him, my voice calm. Jake, you're 18. You're old enough to understand how the world works. If you so much as touch me today, I'll have your father on his knees in front of me by tomorrow. If you don't believe me, go ahead and try. Jake was so angry his eyes turned red, his chest rising, falling rapidly. But in the end, he didn't throw the punch. People with weaknesses are always easier to control than people with strength. My grades were good, but Emma's were better. Because of my health, I had to avoid anything too mentally strenuous. It wasn't as if I needed grades to define my future anyway. Our days consisted of studying together, reading, and discussing different ways to solve problems. Emma's perspective always surprised me. I could see glimpses of the 28-year-old woman she would become, but without the sharp, radical edges. She seemed fine on the surface, but I knew the chasm created by her family was still growing wider inside her. I didn't know how the 28-year-old Emma had managed to rise from the ashes of her despair, but I knew I had to pull the 18-year-old version out of the mire. My health was so fragile that sometimes just an open window could give me a cold that would last for days. Emma was the complete opposite. She was like a wildflower, bending with the wind, but always firmly rooted, possessing a seemingly endless vitality. Even my mother noticed, saying, "That Emma is a good kid. You seem to have more life in you since she's been around." I turned a page in my book and murmured, "She is." I glanced out the window at the bright sunshine. Emma was late today. For the past month, it seemed like she was keeping a secret. I didn't ask, and she didn't tell me, but she always looked exhausted when she came to see me. Sometimes, she would show up with fresh bruises. I didn't realize what was happening at first, not until gym class. A basketball, thrown by Jake, came flying accidentally toward my head. One moment, Emma was leaning against the tree next to me, laughing and talking. The next, the ball was whistling through the air, straight at me. On pure instinct, Emma threw herself in front of me, shielding me with her own body. We were so close I could feel her heart pounding against my chest, and for a moment, my own quiet heart seemed to race along with hers. She let out a muffled grunt. "Emma, are you okay?" She answered through gritted teeth, "I'm fine." She pushed herself off me, strode over to Jake, and grabbed him by the collar. "You did that on purpose, didn't you?" Jake just smirked and held up his hands. "Sorry." Hands slipped. Ever since my threat, a rift had formed between him and Claire. As Leo and Claire grew closer, Jake started looking for ways to get at me. He started with small provocations, and when I didn't react, he escalated just like they used to do with Emma. I lowered my gaze and said nothing, looking only at Emma. Her breathing hitched, and then she drew back her fist and punched Jake square in the face. It was a hard hit. A bruise instantly started to form. "Emma, you hit me. You mess with Ethan. You get hit." Jake lunged forward, but his friends held him back. He spotted Leo and Claire in the distance and sneered. "Have you forgotten who was the first person to talk to you when you first showed up at the Summers house?" Emma ignored him, turning to me instead. "Get back," she said. I didn't say anything. With a sigh, she reached out and patted my head. "Ethan, listen to me." I obediently took a few steps back. Seeing Emma ignore him, Jake got even angrier. "Who do you think you are, Emma? You're not worth a single strand of Claire's hair." Seeing that I was a safe distance away, Emma flipped him off. That sent Jake over the edge. He shook off his friend's hands. "You think you're hot stuff now that you're clinging to the Miller heir? He's just using you like some stray dog he can call whenever he wants." Emma's eyes went cold. "Say that again." Jake repeated the taunt. I said, "You're Ethan's little pet." The next second, Emma's other fist connected with Jake's face, leaving him with a matching set of bruises. The two of them started brawling on the basketball court. Some students tried to break it up, others just watched. Only I stood there, watching Emma hold her own, even when she seemed to be at a disadvantage, and a small smile touched my lips. I didn't like the insecurity and lifelessness that clung to the 18-year-old Emma. She was meant to be confident, cheerful, and vibrant. To be all that, she needed a foundation of support. The Summers couldn't give her that, but I could. I would be her weakness, but I would also be her impenetrable shield. I would be the patient gardener, quietly watching over my precious rose as it bloomed. The fight was brutal. By the time my security detail arrived, Jake had Emma pinned to the ground. Be gentle, I instructed them quietly. Just break one of his legs. My head of security simply nodded. And so, Emma ended up with a few scrapes, while Jake ended up with a broken leg. In the infirmary, Emma sat on the edge of a cot, her body a patchwork of new and old bruises, layers of faded injuries, and fresh ones. I dabbed antiseptic on her cuts with a cotton swab. As my fingers brushed against a dark bruise, she hissed in pain and grabbed my hand. Just a quick wipe is fine. It doesn't even hurt that much. Really? I asked, my face impassive, as I deliberately pressed the cotton swab to the cut on her lip. Ow, that hurts. I thought you said it didn't hurt. She gave me a pained, goofy grin. Well, that part does. I ignored her and went back to cleaning a scrape on her back. The room was silent, with just the two of us. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Ethan, please don't be mad at me. When I still didn't answer, she cautiously glanced back at me, her voice even softer. That time Jake grabbed your collar. I couldn't beat him back then. I didn't mean to get hurt today. I'm not afraid of them bullying me. I'm afraid of them bullying you. I stopped what I was doing and met her eyes. Emma, I'm not angry. A flicker of relief crossed her face. I reached up and ruffled her hair. I could never be angry with you, so you don't ever have to walk on eggshells around me. You looked really cool, by the way, standing up for me like that. Her ears instantly turned crimson. With her wide eyes and messy hair, she looked like an obedient puppy. A puppy in a rose. An interesting combination. That night, Emma went back to the Summers house. I didn't get the news until the next day. They had beaten her and then dragged her to the Reed's house to apologize. My expression turned to ice. A wave of pure rage, so strong it felt physical, crashed through my fragile body. I coughed twice and stood up. My parents, sitting at the dinner table, looked up in surprise. Is it about that girl, Emma? As I pulled on my jacket, forcing myself to remain calm, I explained. I had security break the boy's leg. My mother, who usually seems so gentle and mild-mannered, slammed her fork down on the table. What was his name? Reed. She looked at my father. Honey, you know what to do. My father didn't speak, just gave a grim nod. As I reached the door, he finally spoke. Your health is fragile. Don't get too worked up. Just bring the girl home. I said nothing. I wasn't sure I could keep my composure when I saw Emma. The night before, at 8 o'clock, Emma had returned home to find Claire crying on the sofa, with Leo comforting her. Mr. and Mrs. Summers were hovering over them, asking what was wrong. Emma beat up Jake at school today, Claire sobbed. She knows he's my friend, and that his father is a business partner of yours, Dad, but she was still so violent. I'm so sorry, Mom, Dad. It's my fault. I should have kept a better eye on her. Mr. Summers' voice boomed. What? Emma hit Jake Reed. The Summers business had been struggling lately, and their partnership with the Reed family only existed because Jake had pulled some strings for Claire. The thought of that partnership collapsing made Mr. Summers see red. That little brat. I knew she was nothing but trouble. I'll kill her when she gets home. He spun around and saw Emma standing right there in the doorway. Mr. Summers grabbed the nearest object off a table and hurled at her head. You worthless girl. Emma's brow furrowed as her gaze swept over the sobbing Claire, a feeling of disgust washing over her. She turned to leave, but her father grabbed her arm. Where do you think you're going? All you do is cause trouble. I should never have let you into this house. The rage that had been simmering inside Emma for months finally exploded. She ripped her arm from her father's grasp and stared at him, her eyes burning. You shouldn't have let me come back. You should never have had me in the first place. How dare you speak to me like that? Her father roared. A pain so sharp it felt like it was in her bones shot through her. Her gaze was like a razor, cutting across every person in that room, taking in their varied expressions. Her chest felt as if it had been flayed open, carved up piece by piece, until all that was left was pure hatred. Do you think I wanted to come here? Before I came, at least I could dream that I had a family somewhere that would love me. But now, the curtain's been pulled back, and my parents belong to someone else. You don't love me. You treat me like an enemy. You think I'm stupid and not as charming as Claire. Fine, I'll admit it. But has it ever occurred to any of you that her life was supposed to be mine? I never said it was unfair. I was never jealous. I wouldn't even mind having a stranger for a sister. But I hate you, my parents, for bringing me into this world only to not love me because she decided she didn't like me. I had to endure being beaten and insulted by her admirers. And I took it all. She lifted her chin, looking at each of her tormentors in turn. When you had guests over, you introduced me as a friend's daughter. How laughable. A friend's daughter. In that moment, her smile looked more like a sob. But no one cared. She had laid her heart bare for them to see, and they had looked at it like strangers on the street, thinking only, this has nothing to do with me. After getting the news, we changed course, heading not for the Summers house, but for the Reeds. When I burst into their home, Emma was unconscious on the floor, a pool of blood spreading out from under her legs. My mind went completely blank. My lips moved, but only a whisper of her name came out. Emma. Mr. Reed started forward, a sycophantic greeting on his lips. Mr. Miller, but my security guard shoved him aside. In that moment, the only sound was my own ragged breathing, the only sight Emma and the sickeningly bright blood pooling beneath her. Hospital, I managed to mouth, my body shaking too much to form the word properly. My guard didn't hear me. Sir, to the hospital. This time I screamed it. To the hospital. The force of the words brought a spray of blood from my own mouth. My security team was shocked, but they quickly moved, getting me and the unconscious Emma to the hospital immediately. The chief of medicine, there was a close friend of my father's. Outside the operating room, I grabbed his lab coat, my voice weak. Dr. Evans, please, you have to save her legs. The doctor sighed. I'll do everything I can, Ethan. You're not well. You need to rest. The light above the operating room door flicked on, and as the tension left my body, I passed out. In the dream, I drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes I saw the 28-year-old Emma telling me how she had to crawl on her knees. Then I'd see the 18-year-old Emma, her eyes red, whispering, Ethan, it hurts so much. One on my left, one on my right, they walked away from me in opposite directions. I wanted to reach for both of them, but I couldn't catch either. Finally, I gritted my teeth and ran toward the 28-year-old Emma. I passed through darkness and into light again. With a huge effort, I grasped her hand. Emma, don't leave me. But she just raised an eyebrow and pushed me away. The 28-year-old Emma, she said, doesn't need Ethan. A jolt went through me and my hand fell away. She placed her palm over my heart, her eyes soft, her voice tinged with envy. Ethan, thank you for being there for her when she was 18. The hand on my chest pressed down, and I fell backward into a world of pure white. She stood above me, smiling without restraint, and gave me one last wave, as if saying farewell. When I woke again, I looked at the person in the bed across from me, and it took a moment to register. Her face was terribly bruised, her hands were wrapped in bandages, and both her legs were in casts. She looked like a broken porcelain doll. She raised her one uninjured hand and gave me a little wave. My eyes instantly burned. Emma, I tried to sit up, but she stopped me. Don't move. You're still hooked up to N4. We were both stuck in our beds, tethered by 4 lines. Ethan, you saved me again, she said. Her face was a mess of bruises, but she was smiling at me. I'd peel you an apple to say thanks, but as you can see, I'm down to one good hand. My gaze fell to her casted legs, my own lips trembling. Does it hurt? She nodded. Yes, a lot. Emma stared up at the ceiling, her voice a low murmur, as if she were telling someone else's story. Claire told them I hit Jake. They were afraid it would jeopardize their business deal, so they dragged me over to the Reed's house and told them they could do whatever they wanted to me. Jake came out and said he'd let me go if I got on my knees and begged for forgiveness. Can you believe that? As if I would ever beg him. So what if they broke my legs? I'm not afraid of dying, so why would I be afraid of that? Her tone was casual, but a tear escaped the corner of her eye and traced a path down her pale cheek. Ethan, do you think unconditional love really exists? If it does, why have I never seen it? Why has no one ever loved me? She turned her head to look at me, her expression calm. Even you're looking at someone else when you look at me, aren't you? Beneath that placid surface, I sensed a dangerous beast, ready to surge up and devour me whole. Tears slipped from my own eyes and onto the pillow. I managed a smile that was probably uglier than a grimace. Funny you should say that. She just told me she doesn't want me anymore. Emma's lips trembled, and her voice was thick with emotion. Why? I pulled the 4 from my arm and walked barefoot to her bed. I leaned down, pressing my forehead against hers, letting her see everything in my eyes. A tear fell from my cheek and landed on her dry lips. Because she realized there's someone else in my heart now, someone more important than her. The heat from my skin transferred to hers. Her eyelashes fluttered and her voice shook. Is that person me? I sniffed, leaned in, and gently brushed my lips against hers. As our breaths mingled, I whispered, a secret just for us. It's you. In an instant, the dullness in her eyes vanished, replaced by the light of 1,000 stars. Something between Emma and me had quietly shifted, yet on the surface, nothing had changed. She became more cheerful, though she could be incredibly clingy at times. Ethan, I want an apple. Ethan, I'm thirsty. When I didn't move, she would gesture pathetically with her wheelchair toward her casted legs. I just glance at her and gently tap her on the head. Get back to your homework. She would blink up at me, her fingers hooking the hem of my shirt. But I already know all of it. Seeing her puppy dog eyes and remembering her near-perfect test scores, I would always give in. Fine, I'll go get it. She would sit in the living room while I was in the kitchen, her eyes following my every move. I felt like a butterfly drawn to a rose, only to find myself completely enveloped by it. I chuckled softly and turned to look at the immobile puppy with her blinking eyes, holding the glass of water to her lips. Aren't you going to ask me what happened to the Summers family? The puppy froze, then looked up at me with wide, pleading eyes. Ethan, I'm homeless now. What am I going to do? Will you promise to always be nice to me? She was like a stray puppy, cautiously testing the limits of my affection. I reached out and stroked her soft hair. I will. I'll always be good to you. She broke into a goofy grin and never asked about the Summers again. But just because she wanted to forget didn't mean I was going to let them off the hook. While she was reading, I stepped outside. Has Jake Reed been taken to the hospital yet? My head of security nodded, then asked hesitantly, Sir, are you sure you want us to wait for his leg to heal before we break it again? And his arms, I added. Emma's legs would heal, but I couldn't erase the image of her lying in that pool of blood. I let out a soft cough, my eyes cold as ice. The day Emma was hurt, the day I coughed up blood, my parents had been furious. They had even called my grandfather, who was vacationing in Europe. By the time Emma and I were discharged from the hospital, a report was already on my desk. The Summers, Reed, and Vance family businesses had all been bankrupted. Jake Reed was in the hospital with 2 broken arms and 2 broken legs. After the Vance family went bankrupt, Leo had a massive fight with Claire, blaming her for his ruin. They broke up. I scoffed. So much for true love. With no hope of recovery, Mr. Summers tried to pawn Claire off on some wealthy tycoon. Claire went along with it, but after securing her new position, she cut them off completely, telling them, You were cruel enough to your own flesh and blood. Did you really think you cared about me? You were just using me for what I could give you. Mr. Summers was so enraged he passed out on the spot, and Mrs. Summers was inconsolable. With nowhere else to go, they ended up at a homeless shelter on the outskirts of the city. As it happened, the shelter was located in the building that used to be Emma's old group home. After we met, the Miller family had funded the home's relocation to a much better facility, leaving the old building to be converted into the shelter. I had gone to see Emma's old room once. It was tiny, with a single window no bigger than my hand and a rickety little desk beneath it. I could almost picture a young Emma, her head tilted up, staring out that window with hopeful eyes, dreaming of the parents who loved her, a dream that was eventually and cruelly shattered. Her pride was just a shell for her insecurity, a sugar-coated poison that had almost sent her into the abyss. I couldn't imagine the struggle it must have taken for her to remake herself in the fire of that pain. The more I learned, the more my heart ached for her. In the days leading up to the final exams, my house was on high alert. Emma watched from her wheelchair as my parents surrounded me. You've only just recovered, Ethan. Maybe you should take a year off. Your father's right, darling. It's not as if you need a college degree. My father, a Yale graduate, nodded in agreement, which gave me a headache. Mom, Dad, my body is weak, not my brain. It's just an exam. I'm not going to shatter. They didn't argue, but the look in their eyes was hard to bear. I knew that the incident where I'd coughed up blood had truly terrified them. I turned my head and looked helplessly at Emma. She was sitting by herself in her wheelchair, the sunlight falling on her shoulders and knees. She was bathed in light, yet she looked so alone, as if she'd been forgotten by the entire world. I took 2 steps forward and took her hand in mine. Her cool fingers intertwined with my warm ones. I took a deep breath and turned back to my parents. I know you're worried about me, but life is short and we're not guaranteed a tomorrow. I just want to do the things I want to do and love the people I want to love. If you only get one life, you should live it to the fullest. My mother's eyes welled with tears. My father glanced at Emma, then sighed. You're a man now, Ethan. Do what you feel you must. The day of the exam did not go smoothly. Just as we were about to enter the testing center, A disheveled, middle-aged man and woman rushed forward and grabbed Emma's wheelchair. "She's our daughter," they shouted. "She's an ungrateful wretch. She lives off her rich boyfriend, but refuses to support her own parents. A child like that has no right to be taking this exam." They were like cornered animals, lashing out at someone they perceived as weaker than themselves. The force of their grip made Emma's wheelchair tip, and she grabbed the armrest to steady herself. Security guards tried to pull Mr. and Mrs. Summers away, but they held on tight. It should have been a humiliating, pathetic scene, but Emma just stared at them calmly. "You stood by and watched as my legs were broken," she said, her voice even. "And as you said, I am now dependent on my boyfriend. So what do you possibly hope to gain by shaming me like this?" People in the crowd were starting to whisper, and a guard ran off to call the police. Mr. Summers's eyes were bloodshot, his grip on Emma's leg so tight his knuckles were white. "Since you've got that Miller boy wrapped around your finger, you could just ask him for us, can't you? He wouldn't even have to give us that much. Just whatever scraps he is lying around. We can't go on like this." Their grip was vice-like. I just finished a phone call nearby, and when I saw them, my blood ran cold. I rushed forward, ready to kick them away, but Emma grabbed my wrist, her grip as tight as a drowning person's. "So, in the end, this is still about money." At that, Mrs. Summers seemed to flip a switch, collapsing at Emma's feet in a storm of tears. "Emma, it was our fault. We were so wrong. We finally found you after all these years, only to be misled by that ungrateful Claire. You have to believe us. We do love you, we really do." She sobbed hysterically, but Emma just stared at her. I was getting anxious, seeing that the exam was about to start, and shot the two of them a death glare. But then Emma smiled at her stunned mother and nodded. "Okay, I believe you." I frowned and squeezed Emma's hand. "So what now? What do you want me to do?" Mrs. Summers was still processing, but Mr. Summers answered immediately. "Give us money. A lot of money." "All right." Emma agreed without hesitation. She pried her father's hand off her leg. "I'll give you the money after I finish my exam." Then she took my hand, and we left her ecstatic parents behind and headed for the entrance. "Emma." I couldn't help but say her name. She looked up at me, her eyes as still and calm as a stagnant pool. I wanted to comfort her, but I had no idea what to say. As if reading my mind, she gestured for me to look back. Mr. and Mrs. Summers were waving their arms, shouting for her to hurry up and finish. Emma gave a sarcastic smile. "See, I have parents waiting for me, too." A pang of sorrow hit my chest like a physical blow. I grabbed Emma's shoulders and turned her to face me. "I'm your family," I said, my voice firm. "Don't you dare look at those irrelevant people again." It was the first time I had ever been so forceful with her, but she took it in stride, a smile playing on her lips. "You're so bossy, Ethan, but I like it." As we parted ways to find our respective classrooms, we both walked away with bright red ears. The day our exams ended, Emma took me to a party supply store. She spent $100 on a massive stack of plain money. Then, in front of Mr. and Mrs. Summers, she burned the entire pile in a metal basin. Mr. and Mrs. Summers looked ready to explode, but my security guards held them on their knees. "Here's your money," Emma said calmly as the bills turned to ash. "Think of it as an advance. Be sure to collect it soon. After all, I'm the only one who'll be sending you anything." After being forced to kneel in the ashes for a few hours, they stopped struggling, their faces numb and blank. You make your choices, and you live with them. A pity some people never learn that lesson. As for Claire, within a couple of months, she had gone from a pampered princess to a tycoon's disposable plaything. My health kept me confined to the car, but I had a front row seat for the whole satisfying spectacle. Before she got in, Emma opened my car door, her eyes shining as she held her arms out to me. "Cuddle." I blushed. It felt a little embarrassing to be spoken to like that at our age. "Don't be silly," I said, reaching for her waist, but she wrapped her arms around my neck instead. "Why not?" I thought that was a special privilege for family. Her breath was warm against my ear, sending a tickle straight to my core. "It is a privilege," I conceded. "But are you applying to be my big sister or my little sister?" "I can be the little sister during the day and a big sister at night." I blinked. "Why?" She sat beside me, turned to look at me. "The little sister is too enthusiastic. I'm afraid your body couldn't handle it at night." My face instantly flushed a deep red and stayed that way for the entire drive home. The day our scores were released, I was with Emma at the hospital while she was getting her casts off. I wasn't surprised when I heard our results over the phone, but Emma seemed unexpectedly nervous. Was my score bad? I felt a rare urge to tease her. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound serious. "You did terribly." Her eyes flickered, But instead of asking more questions, she just pulled me into a hug, resting my head against her chest. I gasped, steadying her. "What's wrong?" Her eyes were shimmering, and she looked at me with a heartbreakingly vulnerable expression. "If I did badly, if I'm useless, will you get tired of me?" I couldn't help but smile. I gently squeezed her cheek. "After everything we've been through, how could I ever get tired of you? Really?" Before dinner, my father called Emma into his study. I didn't listen in. I already knew what it was about. A few minutes later, she wheeled herself over to me, her face glowing with excitement. "Your dad said yes," she whispered. "That happy about going to the same college as me. My own scores weren't quite high enough, but the Miller family had money, and I could go wherever I wanted. My father made a sizable donation, becoming a major benefactor, and just like that, I was accepted." She stroked my hand, her eyes dark and intense. "Very, very happy," she said, her voice full of pleasure. "I can't wait for it to be just the two of us." I smiled gently. 2 lifetimes, and I had only ever fallen for one person. Ever since the hospital, it was like a switch had been flipped in her. Sometimes all it took was a single look from her to make me feel completely exposed. I felt like prey being stalked by a patient wolf. The more I tried to pull away, the closer she pressed. Just as she was about to curl up against me again, my father cleared his throat loudly. Emma instantly sat bolt upright, looking perfectly prim and proper. I couldn't help but laugh. That evening, I was pushing Emma's wheelchair through the garden. She spoke up suddenly. "Ethan, do you know what love is?" "What is it?" I asked. She tilted her head back to look at the sky. The stars were brilliant, and the moon was bright. "The essence of love," she said, "is being seen." She turned to look at me, her eyes shining more brightly than any star. "I was a wanderer lost among a billion stars, and you're the only moonlight that ever fell on me. Ethan, maybe it's selfish, but I want your eyes to only ever be on me." She struggled to her feet, turning to take my hands in hers. "Ethan, I love you. Will you be with me?" Her legs were still weak, but she stood there, trembling, bravely waiting for my answer. What else could I do? I wrapped my arms around her waist, supporting my one-of-kind rose with my own body. "Okay, because as it turns out, I happen to love you too." The rose whose thorns had once been stripped away was now, finally, held perfectly whole in the palm of my hand. Together, we would run through the endless, open fields of life, and we would never, ever be parted.